Before we move on to the next thing, which would be dividing fractions, we need to talk about reciprocals. Now, reciprocals are very important in dealing with any kind of fraction operation because a reciprocal is a tool we can use to get a number to equal 1. So it's something we can multiply by a number and make it equal 1. That's why the other name for a reciprocal is called a multiplicative inverse, which means what number can I multiply by something that is its inverse, and its inverse would make it so that it equals 1. All right, and that's very useful with algebraic problem solving, and it's very useful with dealing with dividing fractions. So we're going to talk about reciprocals really quick, and basically the word I want you to know is the word flip. All right, so if you're dealing with reciprocals, pretty much it means you take something, you write it as a fraction, and you flip it. It is that simple. That's all you do. So if you look at 6/7, and I say, okay, what is the reciprocal of 6/7? Well, flip it. So they trade spots, right? The 7 goes up on top, and the 6 goes up on the bottom. So what was once the numerator now becomes the denominator, right? Goes down here, and then this goes up here. So it's just they're trading places. So 7/6 would be your reciprocal of 6/7, and then if you multiplied 6/7 times 7/6, you would see why they are called multiplicative inverses, because you would get 42 over 42, and anything divided by itself except for 0 is equal to 1. All right. Next, 1/22. All right, 1 over 22. So same deal. So what was on the, you just flip it, right? So the 22 goes on top, and then the 1 goes on the bottom. And then sometimes when you do a reciprocal, you might have to simplify it. So if my reciprocal is 22 over 1, I wouldn't write it as 22 over 1. I would write it as 22. Okay, it's a whole number. So the reciprocal of 1 over anything is always going to be a whole number. So the reciprocal of 1/3 would be 3. The reciprocal of 1/7 would be 7. All right, because we don't write them like that. We don't need to do that, right? So that's how those work. When you have the reciprocal of a negative number, remember the goal is so that you multiply it by the reciprocal and it gets to be 1, not -1, 1. So when you have a negative number, its reciprocal also has to be negative. So I'm going to flip places, right? We're going to flip it, and then you're going to carry that negative sign over, because when I multiply -14 23rds times -23 14ths, and I'm going to do cancellation on this one because those cancel and that cancels, you get a negative times a negative, which is positive 1. And that's what we want. All right, -2 2/3. So in order to figure out what the reciprocal of this is, we have to write it as an improper fraction. You can't find the reciprocal of a mixed number without doing that. So let's write this as an improper fraction. So remember, you take the whole and you multiply it by the denominator, because they're saying we're subdividing each whole into 3 parts. So if I already have 2 wholes, that means 2 times 3, so I have 6 parts just in that. And then I add these other 2, so I have 8 parts over 3. So I have -8 thirds. So my reciprocal, I'm going to flip that, so I get 3/8. And then because I have a negative here, my reciprocal is also going to be negative, and you wind up with -3/8. All right, last one, 5. Find the reciprocal of 5. Well, even whole numbers have reciprocals, right? And what I said early in the video is write it as a fraction. Well, how do you write 5 as a fraction? Put it over 1. And then you just flip it. And then you get 1/5. So this whole reciprocal thing is pretty straightforward. You just got to kind of remember how to do a few of the things with the mixed numbers and with whole numbers, and just not forget all that. It's a lot to remember, but the more you do it, the more you'll remember it.